Good morning, everyone. Whoa.
Oh, try that again. One more from the top.
Well, I'm reaching puberty. I apologize. You will not believe how tall I'm going to be when I grow up. This is David Meltzer. Good morning, everyone. We are here on office hours, and I have two of my dear friends. One has been a mentor and a family to me, and that's learn.blainebartlett.com/LMM. The Mindset Mastermind has changed my life because he's changed my mind. And we may use that as his new tagline. The incredible Blaine Bartlett. Welcome to Office Hours, my friend.
Hey, buddy. It's always a pleasure to be here. And we got a great show today. It's starting with our guest here. So go.
It's the last digital show before people on Bloomberg can check out Office Hours at 8:30 p.m. tomorrow night. You got to check it out. It probably is the best TV show that I've done. And Blaine is an incredible partner and host in that. He's incredible. We're starting off with, I think, Sadhguru and Cameron Diaz, Danica Patrick, right? Yeah, it should be amazing. And speaking of amazing, I got a new friend of mine on board here, and I love his podcast. I love his book, and I can't wait to talk about what he does. He's also a business coach, but he has a podcast. He's a high impact coach, but he has a podcast and a book called Shit You Don't Learn in College, and it's controversial. And it's controversial for me, Zander, because I grew up with a mom that believed the fetus wasn't fully developed till after graduate school. Thus, my siblings are where they at. I'd love for you to share your perspective of my mom's favorite quote, doctor, lawyer, or failure.
I love that, man. Well, just so you're aware, I'm half Pakistani, so I'm right there with you.
There you go.
So I grew up with the mentality of exactly engineer, doctor, lawyer. So for me, it's the exact same way. And I think over the last several decades, we're just learning that that's just not true, right? I think Gallup recently did a poll that found out that 50% of everybody in the U.S. believes that college is actually no longer necessary or important for a lot of people. Now, if you know that you want to be a doctor and you know that you want to be a lawyer, that's a totally different story.
Yeah, please stress for a lot of people because
Correct.
It still has its place and it has value.
100%. It has its place. It has its value. And like I mentioned, that was 50% of people, not everybody. But I think one thing that I think is a lot more difficult to argue is making a decision on where you want to take your life at the early age of 17 or 18, right? Like, I don't know about you guys, but when I was 17 or 18, the only thing that I really cared about was the cute girl in Spanish and where I was going to get beer from that weekend, right? And the reality is so many of us that do decide to become doctors or lawyers or engineers at the age of 17 don't actually know what it takes, right? And so I think one of the bigger...
I got to interrupt you too, because this is true for me. I didn't even know what it was.
Exactly.
My favorite line, right? I thought I wanted to be a doctor because they made money. I didn't know you had to be in a hospital I want to be a sports doctor. I didn't know you had to be in a hospital.
and there's blood.
Right. Yeah. And there's dying people.
I'm close. I went to UCLA, so I'm close with a lot of doctors, right? Like half my friends are doctors that graduated from UCLA. And the honest truth is there's a handful of them that really, really are meant to be doctors and they are where they need to be. And then there's a lot of them that are so far down the path right now, they can't do anything else and they don't know what else to do because they're $500,000 in debt and they're just starting to pay off their debt after 15 years of schooling.
Yeah.
Right. So that's another issue there is like you don't even know what you're getting yourself into until you're $500,000 in debt.
Yeah. There's a question that in the coaching work that I do, and I've been coaching for about 40 years, and it's organized around a simple question: for the sake of what? And that is, you slice through a whole lot of bullshit when you ask that question, and you have people really consider it. You want to be a doctor for the sake of what? And if that doesn't, cause something to vibrate inside you, then you start backing away from that decision.
Yeah. But that's hard for a lot of people, right? Because most people make their decisions based on what the world tells them to make decisions on.
Well, that's the question: for the sake of what comes, that starts to pop up.
It has to come from inside. It has to come from deep.
It has to bounce.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the other book that you should write is the shit you do learn in college. And here's what I love about education. it's so accessible. I learn more every day utilizing this thing called the internet, the thing my mom told me was not going to last. I keep asking her for other things that she thinks are going to fail since the internet.
So you can heavily invest in them? Is that?
Yeah, exactly. I keep asking her about crypto.
Yeah.
She hasn't gone hard at crypto, so I haven't invested too much. Anyway, but it's interesting because there's education for the affluent, because I think, as far as being young, we don't have like in Israel, some sort of program where we give back to the government or give back to philanthropy, some kind of 2 or 4 year commitment back into our society, which I think is beautiful. But, thinking about it, if you don't have to go into debt, I can't think of, to me at least, and this is why my girls are in college and one's graduated and all will go to college. I can't think of a better place to be if you don't have to pay for it yourself, because you can then explore what you want to do. You can build a network. You can drink the beers and find the guys and the gals that you want to go out with. So I think it's important that maybe you write the other book too, shit you do learn in college, and then put an economic time risk analysis to it.
Well, I think that's really important because I actually tell people I went to UCLA and everyone's like, oh, you're writing this book, shit you don't learn in college. Like, would you go back and like undo that? I'm like, absolutely not. Yeah. Right. 100% no. I would absolutely go back. Though I didn't technically learn anything from let's call it like my systems, my engineering systems and signals class that I'm now using as a coach and an entrepreneur. There's a lot of stuff that I did learn. I did learn how to interact with people and deal with people. I did learn how to learn. That's probably one of the most important things that I learned while I was in college. And because of that, I'm now able to actually take advantage of a lot of the other really important ways of learning, like you mentioned now, reading books, going on the internet, being a critical thinker, right? My engineering degree, everybody's like, oh, now you're an entrepreneur, you coach coaches and entrepreneurs and help them build businesses. Like, does it suck that you spend $100,000 and you're not using any of that? And I'm like, well, my engineering degree taught me how to take a really difficult problem and find the easiest and simplest way to solve it. I now do that with businesses, and I do that with, just like we were talking about with Blaine, I do that with minds, people, the most complex technology that you have out there, your brain, right? I do that with the human brain. And I couldn't have figured that out if I didn't go to college and do the things that I did. So 100%, there's a lot that I learned there. I think it's just not what people sign up for when they're going for it.
Well, then where does the government come in and trying to get your book quashed? How does that work?
Well, that already happened. I don't know if David told you, but basically when I applied for the trademark of shit you don't learn in college, I got back a 12-page rejection letter from the U.S. Patent and Trade Office detailing very in depth how this would never get trademarked because it's lewd and offensive to the idea of higher education. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of funny because I'm here just pointing out a gap in the bureaucracy, and then another bureaucracy comes in and says no. So we actually took that to court, and for about 2.5 years, we ended up taking that all the way to the Supreme Court before it was ruled a violation of the First Amendment and unconstitutional. Yeah. So we were able to actually get our trademark, and we were able to actually get that book published. But it took a 2.5 year legal battle to get there.
It's interesting, the economic side of it as well. And everything will shift because education, obviously, master classes, masterminds, individual videos, free trainings, which I do every Friday for the last 21 years. Right. Those are the things that allow people to learn. But I will tell you, I feel the same way. I got a scholarship to go to college. So I didn't owe anything when I got out of college, but I borrowed money to go to law school, and it was $100,000 as well. Yeah. Which, as old as I am, 100,000 was a lot of money in the 90s, early 90s. But the interesting thing is just what I learned alone about lawyers and gave me the opportunity as a backdrop, just like my sports knowledge gave me an opportunity as a backdrop to be a leader in the space. The economics of it turned out to be really well. So it's easy for me to say I would absolutely, I would go to the law school I went to, pay for it. I paid double just in what I've learned, how lawyers rip off people, just what I learned there, I've saved millions of dollars in legal bills, catching my lawyers, charging me per minute for a download of a document. I'm like, wait a second here. My document did take me 16 minutes to download. You're charging me $500 for 16 minutes of downloads. But how do we make the decision, right? I think you're young enough that Blaine and I may be a little bit detached from making that economic decision. Talk me through the analysis, the timing and risk tolerance analysis, saying, okay, I'd like to learn what I want to do. Here's how much I should spend to do that. What's that analysis look like?
Well, so the first thing that I would say is like looking at what you just said. I'm a big believer that everything in life happens for a reason, right? Like I had to go through college. I had to go work at Cisco for 6 years. Like my experience there working with C-level executives at places like Disney and NBC and Facebook, like that's like I couldn't trade that for the world now as an entrepreneur, right? I think my bigger issue is with so I think it was the Federal Reserve did a poll that found 27% of all college graduates actually work in a field that requires their degree after college, while 41% work in a field or a job that does not require a college degree. So more people are working at Starbucks after college than are working, like we mentioned, as a lawyer, as a doctor, or anything like that. So I think the biggest issue that we're actually facing here, just like you mentioned, the cost analysis is you probably shouldn't be investing unless you get a scholarship. If you get a scholarship, do it, right? Because then it's not your money. I'm always a big fan of learning on other people's money. That's great, right? But if you're paying for
and eating, if you can eat on other people's money too,
always,
I love free food. Just send it to me.
100%. But if you're going into debt, if you're going to be paying for this on your own or something like that, like I did, right, or like you did for law school, you need to make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. Just like Blaine was talking about, like you need to ask yourself, what was that question, Blaine? It was
for the sake of what? For the sake of what? Yeah.
Right. And I think if you're not able to really answer that question, then you probably need to focus on other things to help yourself get clear first. Because you can spend $100,000 a lot of different ways and get a lot clearer a lot faster than just going to college. Right. For example, if you bought my book, Shit You Don't Learn in College, I virtually guarantee you would have so much clarity around what you actually wanted to do in your life. And that book is $20, right? So, one of the things that I always tell people, I had a mentor that once told me, find the people that are doing what you want to do, or at least like look like they're living the life that you want to live, and go learn from them, right? Those are the people who have practically lived through it. They have the wisdom. Right? Exactly. Yeah. Blaine. But they have the wisdom. And then I always questioned why. So learn from the people that have the life that I want to live. Why am I trying to learn from a professor if I don't want to be a professor? Right. And so there's so many other ways that you can get clarity around what you really want to do, trying new things out. I'm a big fan of like when you're 17, 18, 19, 20, all the way up through your early mid 20s, like you should just be trying absolutely everything. Like you shouldn't be trying to make a decision on where you want to be in your life until, David, you were just talking about like when our brains fully develop, like scientifically proven women develop their brains fully at around 25, men around 27. Sorry, guys. But like, we're not really going to know.
47 or 27 for me.
Yeah. For some of us, there's this little gap.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a lag time for some of us. But really, that's where we should be focusing first. We really need to be focusing on getting more clear about who we are, how we operate as a person, what makes us happy, what fulfills us, what we're really good at, what our skills are, and go dabble, go play around in those things. That should really be the emphasis earlier on until we really make a decision. Nobody should make a decision whether they should be a doctor, lawyer, or anything like that until you're 25, at least. That's my opinion.
Yeah. I agree.
So, where can people find out more about what you're up to, Zander? I love where you're coming from on this. This is really sharp.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, you can check out the book. It's going to be available. It's actually coming out next Tuesday. You can get the pre-order sydlicbook.com, SYDLIC book.com. Or you can check me out on the Instagrams at Zander Fryer. or www.zanderfryer.com to learn more about our company, High Impact Coaching.
Okay. And all the regular places for the podcast.
All the regular places for the podcast, Apple, Spotify, all those fun things. Yeah, shit you don't learn in college is the podcast too.
Yeah, there's
right.
a duality for people that, drop out of college and become successful entrepreneurs as well, that they may have a realization that they've been persuaded into a direction that may not be aligned with the skills, the knowledge, or desire that they want to acquire or that they have. And I think it's important to read this book because he does go through how we look within ourselves to find the reasons why we're doing it. It's so aligned, Zander, with the economic analysis, the time and risk tolerance that I do in investment. But it makes sense because your education is the greatest investment. I will tell you some great advice my mom gave me. If you're not going to invest in yourself, what are you ever going to invest in? And education, not just college, but all education is an investment in yourself. And I would just reiterate to anyone that's maybe a little bit younger, there is a distinction what Zander, Blaine, and I are talking about college, that we are heavily promoting being educated, being more interested and interesting. Yeah. There's just different ways to do it at different costs. And so please, everyone, every day, spend a minimum amount of time learning. There's no doubt about it. It's the best investment you can make in yourself. And obviously, Zander, my mom, and Blaine's mom all knew that, but they didn't have as many options as we do today. So thank you, Zander, for explaining the options, the timing and risk tolerance involved. Shit you don't learn in college and the shit you will learn in college. Read that book.
Coming soon.
Like office hours tomorrow on Bloomberg. We got big launches this week. Thanks so much, man.
Hey, great meeting you, Zander.
Yeah, great to meet you too.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Blaine, we got a little bit of time here.
Good.
Yeah. So I thought we could pick a topic, maybe something you're working on with a new book, and you and I could do a little bit of a session that people like to listen to.
All righty. Well, the idea of be a good one is, Stuart Emery and I are starting to do a lot of work on putting that together. And I won't go into Stuart's pedigree. It's longer than I am tall. But this whole idea of be a good one. I mean, how do you design a life that designs you in return? And that's where this question of the for the sake of what comes back into play. Landing on something that you absolutely resonate with, and then doing whatever it takes to master that. And
I have a question for that, because I think, in fairness to a different generation, one in which is challenged with the speed of change. There's always change. So I always say the challenge is the speed of change, not change itself. That you could start a business 20 years ago and you would have a good shot that you could have that business. You could start a business today, and within 20 days, your business could be obsolete within 20 days. And I see it as I coach so many entrepreneurs and teach so many entrepreneurs. How does the speed of change with you and Stuart, who are just geniuses and have lived and taught so much about this, how does that impact what you're teaching?
David, that's a great question. We've had conversations about time, for a long time. The idea of change, 50 years ago, change seemed fast to people because the way that we held time was different than it is today. And I really mean the way we held time. The problem with change isn't the speed of change. It's not necessarily even the impact of change. The problem with change is the disruption to existing relationships that change causes. And the singular disruption occurs around my relationship with who I think I am. Who am I? Where do I belong? I mean, those are two questions. And if we go back to early days of computing, there's a program that was called a TSR, a Terminal Stay Resident Program, and it booted up when DOS launched. When you launched it, it just went into memory and it just kind of ran it. Who am I? Where do I belong? Are TSR questions. When I wake up in the morning, they get booted, and and that's a relationship. It's a function of identity.
Is that why people, beyond the spectrumization of information, that we are stuck in libraries of bias of what we believe in, beyond the spectrumization of bias, Is that why I feel as if people are clinging on to the bias, to the spectrum, because they're disrupted and they don't know who they are, and that fear of change now says, I'm this party, or I'm this religion, or I'm this color, to project and hold on to who they are?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is my bias on this. I mean, all of the pushback you get, let's just take gender. I mean, just a conversation around gender. Okay, now it's not just a he and a she; it's a they and it's a. I mean, so you got all these pronouns that come in. Where, if I'm attached to a perspective, a relationship that says there are men and there are women, there are girls and there are boys. If I'm attached to that, now physiologically that may appear to be true, but the who that I am is not male or female. The who that I am is a spirit that is manifested in a body that shows up as a male. So, yeah, if we start playing with pronouns and here's the thing, I think it's about playing with ideas. When we start landing on and labeling things, then it becomes a box. Now, the good news about a box is I'm certain there's certainty that comes with it. And people like certainty. It's how we organize our lives and it's how we move things forward. But change is disruptive to primary relationships, and including those questions of identity. So if I'm not aware, and this is where emotional intelligence comes in, if I'm not aware of the cause of the perturbation, if I'm not aware of the cause of how come I'm feeling so, whatever it is, I can't change it. I can't actually do something with it. And if the power of change, or the power of awareness, is it opens up choices. And the more choices I have, the more effective I am in life. It's almost a paradox. Because you would think, well, too many choices, I get flummoxed. Well, actually, no. In any system, the element in the system that's got the most choices will be the dominant element in the system. That's called the law of requisite variety. And we live in systems.
Yeah, it's so interesting in understanding how people live in these boxes, and how insecure they are about change, and determined upon their own emotional intelligence. I'll bring up an author that you probably haven't heard in a while, but Marshall Thurber.
Oh my gosh,
right?
Yes.
And social deviance and perturbation. And one of the mechanisms that I utilize, and we talk about this technology change and how some of the younger generation have a leg up in e-commerce and in social media, but I have a leg up in people like Machiavelli, people like Thurber. I have a leg up in human nature. And I'll utilize social deviance or perturbation in order to effectuate the result or reaction that I'm looking for. And a lot of people don't have the situational knowledge or experience of being able to utilize a reaction. They're so proactive in the action that they're taking, and especially in marketing and advertising, that they haven't really looked at the reaction side of things. How and in what context is the reaction so important, not just your action?
The reaction is an emotional response to a stimulus. Almost always, it's an emotional response to a stimulus, and it shows up, physically, and it shows up physiologically. And the beauty of a reaction is it's a signal that something's in play.
An indicator.
Yeah. And somebody a long time ago said, signs don't precede, signs follow. So if I've got a reaction, it tells me I'm on a path that is going to create some sort of a collision if I'm not paying attention. So that's the good news about reactivity.
And what you talk about signs? What signs? I'll give you one. Pain. Pain itself is a terrific sign to tell you that you have a better place, a better situation to be in. The same way your mom, when you were 3 years old, when you were about to reach out to put your hand in the fire because it looked so attractive and so warm, yelled at you or slapped you, pain became an indicator that, hey, there's a better place to put my hand. What are some other indicators besides pain that can help us raise our awareness so that we can react in the appropriate way with what we want, who can help us, who we can help, how to get it done, and prioritize even?
I'll get a little esoteric here, but I think beauty is what I consider to be beautiful, and and not necessarily just physical beauty, but beauty in the sense that it moves me. There's something that I went, oh, when I start paying attention to that, it gives me a clue to what what I call my spirit. It gives me a clue to what I'm longing for, what's longing to be expressed in me and through me. And beauty is a great reactivity litmus for that. It's a catalyst for that if you actually play with it.
That's amazing. Before we bring Nirbhay on, I got to add, to that, in that beyond beauty, one of the things when I'm looking at my quantum nature, when I'm looking at a genetic or energetic inheritance, as I'm coaching a lot of people, as you have coached me and thousands of other executives around the world, I think it's interesting. As I got older, I realized that one of the things that is an indicator to me is things that are so easy for me, that come so naturally to me, but astound other people. I never paid attention to people said, Dave, how do you do that? Like, this hot seat coaching is one of my quantum abilities that very few people on earth can hit 20 questions in a row and somehow, with some adequate experience, education, and knowledge or channeling, give and deliver value from multiple topics in multiple industries and multiple careers. But yet, to me, it probably is what LeBron James feels like when he does a 360 dunk. He's like, why is everybody cheering? This is something that's quantum in my nature. So as a last indicator, beyond pain, beauty, I think we have to be aware of our quantum inheritance, the genetic and energetic beings that we are, that when things come really easy, that doesn't mean they're not valuable. In fact, some of the times that's where you should lean into, because then you can really enjoy the consistent, persistent pursuit of your potential of a quantum ability that's beyond others.
That circles all the way back to whatever you are to be a good one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like,
Martin Luther King.
Lean into that. Lean into
Martin Luther King, right? Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever you're going to be the best that you can be as well. Learn something and have fun. Well, we're going to learn something and have fun now, because we're going to bring in our next friend, Nirbhay Handa, group head of the group of business development at Henley and Partners. He's the managing director of their firm's South Asia team, investtomigrate.com. And, you guys have done a lot of valuable research over the years, Nirbhay. And in that, today, immigration and our passport systems and mobility is so important in the protection of the earth. I was with Deepak Chopra, and he changed my whole perspective when he said, you realize, David, for the first time on earth, every single human being at the same time is questioning human existence. And your research absolutely brings that perspective to me into context, which is why I'd love to discuss the importance of the Henley Passport Index and the Global Mobility Report that you have. Is that we are today and every day from today taking into consideration the entire world's human existence. It's not just America or China or Europe or Russia. It's the entire world, and we share that common bond together. How important is the report, and what have we learned?
Hey, David, first of all, good morning. I know it's really early in the U.S.
Great. You can tell by my hair. This is how early it is. I should have put my suit and had that beautiful look out. He looks like he been up for 6 hours.
Yeah.
No, I just finished work. It's 8 o'clock in Singapore, so completely different time zones. Good. I think the Henley and Partners Passport Index is really relevant today. As you see, U.S. historically has had a very strong passport. You can travel to about 185 countries with their American passport, and then you have China, where you could travel to only 79 countries. So that the Chinese passport is ranked, 72nd. So there's a huge difference right there. And then there's a distinction between the global north, which is the developed world, and then you have the global south, which is the developing world, right? What Henley and Passport Index does is it defines how strong your mobility asset is. So your mobility asset is either your passport or a residential permit that you have in a jurisdiction, right? And in the times like these, it's very important to have a strong mobility asset or have multiple residencies. The number one reason for that is to have the ability to hedge your overall sovereign risk, right? The number two piece to that is to have a bit of an insurance policy. Now, blockchain, Bitcoin is widely being considered as a hedge against inflation. Now, alternative residency is now being looked at as a bit of a hedge against any macro adversity that can come upon you because of your jurisdiction, right? So this is what Henley Passport Index does. It ranks your mobility asset, right? And US obviously enjoys a fairly strong position, which is ranked number 7th in the world, right? Now, going back to the more macro discussion around migration, as you rightly said, migration is extremely important for the global recovery. But now what's happened during the pandemic is that you see, obviously, there are a lot of COVID-related restrictions, but a lot of people are arguing these COVID-related restrictions are personified migration containment instruments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's that doing is it's limiting the transfer of people from the global south, the developed world, into the global north, which is the developed world, from the developing world to the developed world. So it's hindering that. And, it's a really strange situation, because if you look into US, 51% of $1 billion startups in the US, they're founded by immigrants from the likes of Uber and from the likes of Palantir. So from such a broad level, going down into smaller aspects, which is, for example, labor supplies in places like Singapore and Japan, construction jobs, healthcare stuff in the Middle East, all of this is reliant on migration, right? And if you take that away from the picture, it's really going to hinder the overall global recovery. And I think that's what the report suggests. And that's why, in order for us to get back to normal, migration needs to come into play seamlessly and as effectively as it used to be before, right? But on the humanitarian aspects, there's another discussion. You've got climate change, which has displaced more than 21.5 million people, right? By 2050, there are going to be 20 million homes destroyed in Bangladesh. Where do these people go? And United Nations do not recognize them as climate refugees just yet, right? So there's another humanitarian discussion around migration that also needs to be addressed. So this is what the report's been discussing. And as I said, migration is exceptionally important for society to operate effectively. And it needs to come back into play sooner than later.
Now, most of these restrictions, I'm going to make an assumption here, but I don't think it's fallacious, but they are government imposed or jurisdictionally imposed. I'll just start with clarifying. Is that assumption accurate?
Yeah. Most of them are. And, just adding to that point, a place like Singapore is limiting travel from everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
So an Indian national cannot come into Singapore, an Egyptian national cannot come into Singapore, but places like Egypt, which are not ranked very highly and which are part of the global south in a way, the developing part of the world, they're completely open, right?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting aspect of it.
Well, and so with that in place here, if it's jurisdictional restriction, what's the role of business in actually kind of going over that hump? Because businesses typically will transcend national and jurisdictional boundaries. So if business is the most pervasive force on the planet, which it is, how does business's role come into play here in actually narrowing that gap rather than allowing it to continue to expand?
Yeah, I think what happens is, we're starting to reach a stage where a lot of countries are trying to recognize this pandemic as an endemic, right? So there is going to be a change, but, the change needs to be made faster. If we want to recover, this needs to come into play much before than we're thinking, right? And arrangements need to be made to ensure there's effortless migration of people, migration of skilled talent around boundaries so the businesses can prevail, right? But it's all about speed, right? And I think that's the question that the governments are trying to address. And they can only address this when they categorize this situation as an endemic and they decide, let's move on from here. And they also bridge the gap between the global south and the global north, right? Mm-hmm. And I think those are the direction that governments and jurisdictions they need to take.
And Nirbhay, excuse me, I'm reaching puberty, as I said earlier, working with banks and law firms, that's really your sweet spot or core competency. Banks are obvious to me because we got to fund the change. Which portions of law firms, coming from someone who has a law degree, what topics are you dealing with in the law firms that are going to be able to, is it the Bradley Tuss of the world? There has to be, I think, I'm thinking about just beyond the regulatory side of law firms, what areas of law firms can assist in why would you consult with law firms beyond some other aspect of, banking's obvious, but insurance, I can think of a lot of other different verticals to address.
Yeah, I think so. Law firms, they tend to be a great intermediary to our business, right? Because they do end up dealing with a lot of private clients. So for example, US was our biggest business. We had more Americans looking at alternative citizenship or residencies than people from emerging markets, right? So we will work with a lot of law firms who work with high net worth individuals, and they would say, hey, our client is interested to build a portfolio of residencies. He's looking at a benign neutral citizenship, to hedge overall his sovereign risk and to plan for the future, and also to diversify his mobility asset, right? For example, right now, the EU is thinking to eradicate the US travel visa-free access to the European Union, right? But if, let's say, you're an American citizen and you have a residency in Portugal or you have a residency in Greece, even in that condition, you can still travel, right? So a lot of families in the US are looking to diversify their mobility assets by acquiring another citizenship or a residency. And that's where we come into play, and that's how we work with the law firms, because they would work with private clients who would have these needs around planning their residence and citizenship.
Yeah. So just on that topic, just real simply, if you can simplify this, how would a lay, let's put American, U.S. citizen, how do you go about getting a secondary residency? Yeah. I know there's paperwork involved, and there's probably a roadmap.
There's money and paperwork.
There's money and paperwork, yeah. So just for the folks listening here, what would be some of the things that I would want to pay attention to?
So essentially, I think the first and foremost is all of these jurisdictions, who offer a citizenship or residence by investment program, they really want impeccable documentation around your source of fund, right? So that's something you need to sort of ensure that everything is in place, right? The second piece is, obviously, as a business, we have very high due diligence standards. So you've got to qualify those due diligence standards to ensure the reasons you're acquiring these residencies are appropriate, and also there are no negative flags on you, right? So that's the second piece. The third piece is you need to decide what works for you. Would you like to own a second home in Crete or Corfu in Greece? Or would you prefer Athens, a little bit more laid back? Or would you prefer Malta, which is the epicenter for blockchain? So it really depends, which country suits you. And we come into play to help you decide that, right? You also need to decide whether you're looking just for an alternative residence or you're looking for an alternative citizenship, right? That's, again, something that you need to consider. And once you're able to answer those two questions, then I think the journey becomes much easier from here. A lot of American citizens in recent times have been looking at acquiring a citizenship in the Caribbean, right? St. Kitts and Nevis, Forbes rated as the best second passport Americans could ever have, right? And the reasoning behind that is completely different. It's essentially diversifying your mobility asset, having a bit of a plan B, a bit of an insurance policy, also possibly something that's less invasive to your wealth structuring, right? Those reasons can be for people who are looking for an alternative citizenship, but alternative residency is primarily, it could be driven by your lifestyle, your interests. Malta has become the yachting capital of the world. If you want to dock your yachts in Malta, then let's just get you a Maltese residency, right? So those reasons really determine, which country would suit you, whether it's a residence or a citizenship.
Nirbhay, one of the other things that you're dealing with, which is so hard for people to understand, is what I call aggregation. It's, Einstein's rule of 72. It's something that in 1986, when I took geology, terrified me. But it also, I think, helped with my success, and always has, is that, when you're a quarter of the way there, meaning when maybe we're here in residency or citizenship, we're a quarter of the way there of people understanding resource wise, you're 90% of the way done. So meaning that, when the earth and its resources are at a quarter used, everyone feels very relaxed. Well, let's say every 20 years the earth is doubling its necessity of resources. Well, in 20 more years, your 50% of the resources on Earth are taken. And everyone on Earth is like, oh, this is terrific. And I think this is applicable to citizenship as well as residency as well as citizenship. So we're sitting here, and then in another 20 years, the whole world the resources are full. But then in another 20 years, you need 2 worlds and then 4 worlds. And this aggregation can, in the positive behavior, work very well for you, but in the negative behavior, it's disastrous. And what my only insecurity of residency and citizenship is that it's so easy for Malta or the Bahamas or Portugal, because I have so many friends buying homes there. It's so easy that when it makes that last double and all of a sudden they're out of resources, who's the first to go? And you think this is your safety plan, and within one closing of a border and switching of a rule, and I saw people in Japan during the pandemic this happened to, you've lost your home, you've lost your yacht, your money is not accessible, and you're actually better off in your own country as whatever resources you have there, and you've wasted not only what time, money, and emotion that you spend in there, but moreover, you put everything at risk that you put there. How do you deal with that perspective that I have?
I think really amazing question. What we tell clients is that you need to de-risk yourself from just one jurisdiction. You cannot have all your eggs in one basket, right? Mm-hmm. So you need to diversify your wealth offshore, right? So that's one point that works very much in favor for citizenship and residence by investment, right? There has been a bit of a rise of transnational and cosmopolitan mindset, and people are becoming open to various geographies, right? It may work very differently for somebody sitting in the developed world than somebody sitting in the developing world, right? Particularly, during the pandemic, a lot of people were very concerned in places like Philippines and Indonesia with the healthcare infrastructure. And they hope, they could be in Singapore at that point of time. So for them, it really does serve a bit of a plan B, a bit of an insurance policy, right? Because their country does not have a tenacious banking infrastructure to keep their wealth. And they're reliant on places like Singapore, Zurich, Geneva, London, or New York City, where they have a tenacious banking infrastructure. So for them, this really becomes a bit of a need, right? And particularly, if you are holding a passport of Philippines or Indonesia, there are serious travel restrictions on you, right? As a globally mobile entrepreneur, it really limits the amount of business you can do across geographies. So for them, it's very natural to consider, hey, let me get a benign neutral citizenship that gives me that ease of travel. Right? Now let's move on to the developed world, right? Let's move on to the Americans, right? Let's move on to people in Europe who are also considering getting an alternative residence. And I think there it's more of a resilience plan than a need. It's more that, hey, I should have plan B. Hey, I need to sort of plan, how possibly I'm going to structure my wealth over the next 20, 40 years, right? Does Portugal have a better provision around resident non-domicile taxation? How I can plan my inheritance, right? So all of those aspects become more profound when you're dealing with people in the developed world, right? But as you said, regardless of wherever you may be, nobody knows what the future holds for you. Every day in the US, we would hear about some form of crisis. It could be political, it could be healthcare, it could be economic. So you're better off planning in advance and having at least 2-3 residencies than having none, right? Because nobody knows what the future holds. And I think that's essentially the purpose that alternative residencies they serve. But on the other end, we've consulted with more than 14 governments worldwide. We designed these programs for various governments. We were the guys back in the day who worked with the government of Malta. And more countries are approaching us because it is an incredible way to bring highly skilled entrepreneurs into your country. And highly skilled entrepreneurs, they want to go to places which are politically stable, which are economically stable, where they feel they have a tenacious banking infrastructure. So countries are working towards that. And I think we're going to reach a stage where countries are competing for these valuable entrepreneurs, right? That's going to happen eventually. And they're going to go where they're treated best.
That's for sure. Well, thank you so much, Nirbhay, because I think we are absolutely going to keep our eye on this for the next 20 years. And I can see it, especially in the entrepreneur space, not just with friends moving and, having this invest to migrate mindset and strategy, but also just how many of those countries that you listed off are creating entrepreneurial events, are hiring, me to speak, for example. And I was like, why is Malta keep, so many opportunities in Malta? It's, and Portugal, I'm going, you listed out basically all the countries that I get hired in because they want to attract entrepreneurs. It makes sense to me. Invest2migrate.com, Nirbhay, Handa. Thank you so much. This has been extremely educational. We look forward to more conversations with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Have a great day.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yeah, good night. All right. Last but not least, the cleanup hitter of the day, Leslie McIntyre Tavella. We're here to talk about an important conversation as an entrepreneur. She has her new book, which could not be more timely, and probably no accident to that. It's called Framing Success, and it's the 20 essential lessons for achieving entrepreneurial greatness from a self-made multimillionaire. And I've been that twice in my life. But your background as an entrepreneur is in talent, and what a great background. I know Janice Holroyd is a close friend. She's been on my TV shows, and I've learned so much about acquisition, retention, and engagement. And if you think about those three areas, there's no wonder why you're a multimillionaire, why you're so successful, because if you're able to recruit, retain, and engage, these are three superpowers of making a lot of money, helping a lot of people, and having a lot of fun. A little bit easier for Blaine and I, if you look at, our image here of two middle-aged white guys. Things were a lot easier for us. Things were a lot easier for us than it is and was for you. And I have 3 daughters, and I am hyper aware of encouraging them to seek mentorship from people like Leslie Tavella, because I want them to learn the directions so that they don't have to pay the dummy tax or have the wrong perception. So I'm going to talk about those 3 areas and start with recruitment, and that is stimulating interest. How important is recruitment in being in framing your success?
No, it's first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. It's incredibly important. And I think it's something that companies are still somehow completely missing the mark on, which is really hard to believe with all the technology that we have today and the platforms and all the, processes that we keep putting into place. Companies are they're really, kind of experiencing this black hole of recruiting where they're bringing in mass amounts of candidates and resumes, but they're not getting through this process in a seamless fashion. And they're really not warehousing, if you will, these great candidates for future opportunities. And I think this is really the biggest miss with companies. It's kind of like, oh my gosh, we have some openings. We panic. Let's go put these, boring, long job posts out there that really don't in any way excite the people that you're trying to engage and attract. They list all of these unnecessary skills, and they really limit all of the possibilities. And I think about myself as a candidate back in the day. And honestly, if you looked at my background and you just took me on paper for face value, I would not have been valuable to any firm. And I think I've done a pretty good job of having a pretty good career. So I just think this is where companies are really, really missing the mark. And I talk a lot about fit and function, which basically kind of looks at hard skills and soft skills. And I think this is what companies really need to focus on today.
There's a notion that I play with a lot, and I've got a number of clients that I've actually worked with this idea on, but it's premised in the idea that we will hire people for what they can do, and then we will fire them for who they are. and there's the reciprocity around that too, because today's workforce, we will go to work for people, oftentimes we would go to work for people for what they can do for me, but then we would fire them for who they are. And by fire them, I mean, we will quit the job and walk away. And we're seeing a lot of that right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I hear companies talk a lot about, when we get back to normal. And when this pandemic is over, I got news for you guys. We're never going back to normal. Like, everything has been disrupted now, and companies really need to kind of get on the ball and really start looking at things through different lenses. And so a lot of this, really the most important thing is it starts with talent and your talent pipeline, and how you're really going to just list the bare necessities of what you need for the position, and then really talk about, I call MVPs, which is, what is your company's mission, value, and purpose? Yep. So young people today want to get behind a mission and get behind a brand. They want to not just have a job. Again, back in my day, it was great. You would get a job, and if you could stay at a job for 30 or 40 years, that was the hit, and you'd get your pension or whatever, and you were like, yay, I did a great job, and this is super. This isn't what's going on today. So companies really have to understand that their culture is extremely important, and they really, they have to have, they have to talk about their mission and their purpose. And that's what people want. They want to get behind that.
And when you talk about these lessons, I believe pain's an indicator of lessons, mistakes, failures, and setbacks. And yes, you've been an entrepreneur like us, and we've experienced those in order to get to a better place, a better situation. If, one of my daughters came to you for mentorship, and you could give her one of those 20 essential lessons about achieving greatness as an entrepreneur, as a self-made millionaire-ess, because I believe you have achieved far more than Blaine and I together, considering the pain, setbacks, failures, and biases that you had to face through achieving what you have. What's the number one lesson in these 20 lessons in your book that you would start with, or has the most impact?
Oh, that's such a good question. So one of the things I've said to my daughter since she was a little girl is, no matter what you do in life, I don't care what your job is, how menial, how simple it might be, do it to the absolute best of your ability. Do everything with such incredible engagement, and excitement. And I'm talking about, if you're packing groceries, pack the best damn bag of groceries you can. And the reason I say that, and I talk about it in my book, is that's how I was actually discovered. I was in a small company. I worked in the paper supply department in a little crummy office all the way in the end of a building, and I was on the phone with a client, and the senior vice president of sales came in, and he heard me on the phone, and he heard me engaging with this customer, and he said to me, come up to my office later and talk to me. I was 16 when I had that job. And so it was really, it's always about kind of exposing your own brand and, your own personal brand and engagement and what you bring to the table. And again, I did not have a lot of skills. And so what I had was me. And so I had to really showcase that. And so I say to a lot of people today, it's really important to work on your self-brand and to really do the best that you can, even with the simplest of tasks. I think that's really, really important.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah, be a good one. Where the whole notion of chop wood, carry water.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And I don't think a lot of people realize that today, but wherever I go, I'm always watching people. It's just, my husband always says, can we just go out and you not look at anyone or talk to anyone or engage anyone? But I can't help it because I do love people and I'm in that business. And I look and watch and see how people engage with other people and how they, like the art of service to me is really a magnificent thing that I think is really dying. And I hate to see that because I think it's incredible what you can do and what you can offer to a person just simply with your, the power of nice and your personality.
It's so funny. I think about, my own name, which is David Meltzer, which means beloved servant. And people ask me, what do I think is a key element? And it's to be a beloved servant, to love yourself so you can give what you have to others to the best of your ability. Real quickly before I let you go, Leslie, I have a saying for all things. I have 4 children, and I've learned to make things simple, whether they're playing sports or taking a test or in their first jobs. The key to it is 3 things. And I think it is encompassed in your framing of success in the 20 essential lessons for achieving entrepreneurial greatness from a self-made millionaire like yourself. But are you doing your best? Yeah. Are you learning something?
That's it.
And are you having fun? You know, that last one especially. Can you find the light, the love, and the lessons in taking out the garbage at a fast food restaurant? Can you find it? And when you were sitting at 16, when you described what you were doing, and I've been that executive vice president of a multi-billion-dollar company that has walked by a cubbyhole and heard somebody that, you know, was doing their best. They were learning something and having fun on the phone. And I said, hey, come up to my office. And the greatest thing about getting old is Blaine knows, you don't, but Blaine knows about getting old. And so do I. Is that when you do, and I'd love to know who that vice president is, because I know that you are the crowning jewel. As for me, I have these 19-year-olds that now are in their 30s that are multimillionaires, that have families and homes and all these things. And I think to myself, what if I didn't walk by? Or what if I didn't, when I walk by, what if I didn't stop and say, hey man, come up. I can help you because you do these three things. And so I want to thank you, not only thank the person that walked by your cubbyhole, but inspired you to elevate others and to celebrate others, as Blaine and I have done. You're an incredible entrepreneur. Please check out that book. It's brand new, The Framing Success, 20 Essential Lessons for Achieving Entrepreneurial Greatness, from someone that's done it herself, a self-made millionaire. Leslie McIntyre, Tavella, thanks for joining us on Office Hours. Congratulations. Keep on celebrating.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. It was great to be here.
I love having you on the show, Leslie.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
You got it. Thank you. Yep. A true compassionate capitalist, and
absolutely
an icon for many men and women to look up to. She is one of the top women business people and best places to work. First place she won, actually. Anyway, Blaine, we're rocking and rolling as usual. What's your takeaway for today?
I'm going to go back to our conversation. Be a good one. Yeah, Leslie kind of nailed that. You know, if you're packing a bag of groceries, pack the best damn bag of groceries you can pack. I mean, that sort of thing. You know, it also showed up in the other two conversations that we had. Nirbhay, I mean, just kind of, how do I live my life the best I possibly can? I mean, this gets a little bit more granular, and whatnot in that regard. But I also loved how Zander was kind of positioning things. I mean, you don't need, quote unquote, the college, and it's all about the education. Education for the sake of what? Be a good one. Yeah, I've got one life. I want to be a good one. And then our conversation about the disruption to change, that's a relationship dynamic. Yeah, I want to be a good one. Yeah, for myself.
I love that. Be a good one, everyone. And for me, the takeaway was one of the greatest lessons I've learned from my older brother, and it was brought up with Zander and applicable to Nirbhay, of course, applicable with our conversation and with Leslie. When I went into that hospital after I realized I wasn't going to be a professional football player, and I looked at my oldest brother who was doing his residency at UCLA, ironically, and I looked around and he said, "What's the matter?" I said, "I hate hospitals." And he told me, "David, you need to be more interested than interesting." And I think, you know, all three of our guests in our conversation are aligned or indicative of people, you know, being more interested, finding the light, the love, and the lessons, doing the work to find out the alignment, the synergy, the supplementary skills, knowledge, and desire to what we want to try. And once again, learn from. And when I say try, I mean do your best, learn lessons, and have fun. That's trying to me. And as always, I've learned the lessons and been more interested and interesting by being part of the learn.blainebartlett.com/LMM, the Mindset Mastermind. My mentor, Blaine Bartlett. If you haven't reached out to him, you're making a big mistake. Check us both out tomorrow on Bloomberg. We'll be releasing the Amazon as Bloomberg allows, and it will be on Amazon Prime, but we are launching on Bloomberg tomorrow, and we will let you know when the binge watching can occur on Amazon Prime Video as well. But to that sake, please check us out tomorrow. It's the best show that I've been involved with, and thanks to people like Blaine Bartlett being involved and all the great guests we have. Danica Patrick, Sadhguru, to name a few tomorrow just alone, but we have 72 of the biggest names. It's amazing, or maybe even 75, but it's incredible. I want to thank you, Blaine, for making it this show and the TV show such a huge success. So thank you.
I've had a ball. This has been a great ride. It's been a great ride. And the time tomorrow, the launch is at
8:30 p.m. Yeah, 8:30 p.m. And
Pacific.
enjoy it.
8:30
Pacific
p.m.
time.
Pacific. Yep.
Yeah, and you can DVR it. It's on there, and we're so excited. And
can't wait.
Awesome, my friend. I will talk to you soon. Thank you
buddy.
so much. All righty. I will have fun. Say hi to Cynthia. We're there, everyone. You know it. We came up early. It's I should have renamed the show Field Trip, because I feel like we get to take a field trip every day. Even if I just woke up, it's amazing how much we can learn together here. I want to thank all our fabulous guests. Please join us tomorrow. As usual, we have Clubhouse training, all the different things, BYOQ. You bring the questions, we'll bring the answer. But the most exciting thing tomorrow for me is the launch of the TV show, Office Hours with David Meltzer, Blaine Bartlett, and many, many others. Come join us. If you're lost, david@dmeltzer.com. Let me help you find yourself. Thank you so much. Remember, most importantly, Matt, you turn your hat around. I see that. Most importantly, my friend, be kind to your future self. Do good deeds. We'll see you tomorrow on TV. Thanks.